What were they thinking? Try this again. What were they thinking? Those people who came up with the narrative lectionary. I mean, I like starting in the book of Genesis and working our way through the biblical story all the way up to Revelation. But we started in September. And so here we are on the first Sunday of Advent, and we've only gotten as far as the exile. Today's reading is from the book of Daniel. It's a story of how Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, threw Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego into a fiery furnace because they wouldn't bow down to his statue. How are we going to get from here to the birth of the baby Jesus in 3.5 weeks? On the other hand, today's reading from the regular lectionary is no better. It's the grown-up Jesus talking to his disciples about the second coming. He says, "But about that day and hour no one knows, neither the angels of heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. Then 2 will be in the field, 1 will be taken, and 1 will be left. 2 women will be grinding meal together, 1 will be taken, and 1 will be left. Keep awake, therefore, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming." That doesn't really put you in the holiday mood either, does it? But both of these readings are about living your convictions and holding on to your faith and being ready for whatever comes next. In that sense, both of them are appropriate for the times in which we are living. These are difficult days, friends. I don't care which side of the political divide you may happen to fall on. I don't know of anyone right now who is saying, these are the best times ever. So we need the Lord's help. We need a good word. We need someone to tell us that if we just hang in there, it's going to be all right. And this story from Daniel may be perfect for the occasion. Now, I'd like to read the story exactly as it was written, because I have a feeling it was written for children. You'll notice that it includes a lot of repetition, which is a regular feature of children's stories. The experts say repetition helps children learn vocabulary and sentence structure, develop phonemic awareness, and increase their engagement with the story. Let's see if it increases your engagement as I read Daniel chapter 3 from the New Revised Standard Version of the Bible, updated edition. King Nebuchadnezzar made a golden statue whose height was 60 cubits and whose width was 6 cubits. He set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then King Nebuchadnezzar sent for the satraps, the prefects, and the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the justices, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces to assemble and come to the dedication of the statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. So the satraps, the prefects, and the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the justices, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces assembled for the dedication of the statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. When they were standing before the statue that Nebuchadnezzar had set up, the herald proclaimed aloud, "You are commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that when you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, drum, and entire musical ensemble, you are to fall down and worship the golden statue that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Whoever does not fall down and worship shall immediately be thrown into a furnace of blazing fire." Therefore, as soon as all the peoples heard the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, drum, and entire musical ensemble, all the peoples, nations, and languages fell down and worshiped the golden statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Accordingly, at this time, certain Chaldeans came forward and denounced the Jews. They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, "O king, live forever. You, O king, have made a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, drum, and entire musical ensemble shall fall down and worship the golden statue, and whoever does not fall down and worship shall be thrown into a furnace of blazing fire. There are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men pay no heed to you, O king. They do not serve your gods, and they do not worship the golden statue that you have set up." Then Nebuchadnezzar, in furious rage, commanded that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought in. So they brought those men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods, and you do not worship the golden statue that I have set up? Now, if you are ready, when you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, drum, and entire musical ensemble, you should fall down and worship the statue that I have made. But if you do not worship, you shall immediately be thrown into a furnace of blazing fire. And who is the God who will deliver you out of my hands?" Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to present a defense to you in this matter. If our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the furnace of blazing fire and out of your hand, O king, let him deliver us. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods, and we will not worship the golden statue that you have set up." Then Nebuchadnezzar was so filled with rage against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that his face was distorted. He ordered the furnace heated up 7 times more than was customary, and ordered some of the strongest guards in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and to throw them into the furnace of blazing fire. So the men were bound, still wearing their tunics, their trousers, their hats, and other garments, and they were thrown into the furnace of blazing fire. Because the king's command was urgent and the furnace was so overheated, the raging flames killed the men who lifted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But the 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down, bound, into the furnace of blazing fire. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished and rose up quickly. He said to his counselors, "Was it not 3 men that we threw bound into the fire?" They answered, "True, O king." He replied, "But I see 4 men, unbound, walking in the middle of the fire, and they are not hurt, and the 4th has the appearance of a god." Nebuchadnezzar then approached the door of the furnace of blazing fire and said, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here." So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out from the fire. And the satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's counselors gathered together and saw that the fire had not had any power over the bodies of those men. The hair of their heads was not singed, their tunics were not scorched, and not even the smell of fire came from them. Nebuchadnezzar said, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him. They disobeyed the king's command and yielded up their bodies rather than serve and worship any god except their own God. Therefore I make a decree. Any people, nation, or language that utters blasphemy against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses laid in ruins. for there is no other God who is able to deliver in this way. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. It's a good story, isn't it? And although there is some violence in it, it's a good children's story. The repetition draws them in, makes them smile, and maybe even lean in close to hear the moral of the story. What is the moral? There is only one true God, and under no circumstances are you to worship or serve any other God. Why would the author of Daniel want children to learn that lesson? Because he was writing at a time when Israel was occupied by Syria. And the king of Syria, a madman named Antiochus Epiphanes, was trying to force God's people to give up their religious traditions. The use of the Hebrew language, the practice of circumcision, and the worship of God. He wanted to Hellenize the Jews, that is, force them to adopt Greek culture and customs. Some of them were giving in. And that's why the author of Daniel turned to these old stories from the time of the Babylonian exile, 400 years earlier. He lifted up the examples of a few Jewish heroes who held on to their faith even when a foreign king threatened them with death. I want you to understand how subtle this can be, this pressure to give up your traditions and values. I want you young people to think about it. If you were living in the time the book of Daniel was written and some kid in your math class said, "Hey, why do you speak Hebrew all the time? Why don't you speak Greek like the rest of us?" You might want to do it just to show you could. Or if he said in the cafeteria, "Why do you eat that disgusting kosher food? Why not have a nice ham sandwich with the rest of us?" You might be tempted to swap lunches. Or if he said in the locker room, "How come you're circumcised? Is that some sort of religious thing? You some sort of religious nut?" You might be embarrassed and turn away. You can almost hear the author of Daniel saying to the young people of his time, don't forget Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and how they stood firm in their faith even when they were threatened with death. Can we hear him say that even now? Can we promise that we will not give up our religious beliefs and values even if everyone else does? That we will not bow down at any other altar or worship any other God except God alone? Because it's the kind of thing that can sneak up on you. God says, "Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor." Sometimes we shorten that to say, "Thou shalt not lie." And yet we live in a culture where lying has become so commonplace that we hardly notice or care anymore. God says, "Thou shalt not commit adultery," and yet some people say, is it really adultery if nobody gets hurt or nobody gets caught? God says, "Thou shalt not murder," and yet there are more guns than people in this country, and we average more than one mass shooting per day. Nobody has put up a golden statue 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide and asked us to bow down to it, but that would be easier. We would know not to do that. These other things are more subtle. We don't always see them coming. But can we take another good, hard look at the first commandment, the one that says, "I am the Lord your God, you shall have no other gods before me"? Can we ask ourselves, is anything beginning to take God's place in my life? Have I decided that it's okay to ignore some of the things He commands? Have I given my love or loyalty to anyone else? It might help to realize that the word worship was originally two words, worth and ship. I think you know what worth means. We sometimes ask, how much is it worth? But ship, in this case, is more complicated. It's a noun suffix. When you add it to the end of a word, that word becomes a noun. For example, friendship is the state or condition of being a friend. Worthship is the state or condition of being worthy. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had to ask themselves, is this golden statue worthy of my worship? It's impressive. I can admire it, but I can't worship it. Only God is worthy of my worship. So I ask again, is there anyone or anything who is trying to take God's place in your life? Can you remember that He alone is worthy of your worship? I once went on a 24-hour spiritual retreat at Belmont Abbey, a Benedictine monastery not far from Charlotte, North Carolina. I ate with the monks in the refectory. I worshiped with them in the basilica. A lot of it was in Latin, and I didn't understand much of what I was saying, but there I was, chanting the Psalms in an unknown tongue. Until that moment when all the monks turned toward a large statue of the Virgin Mary and began chanting to her. I love Mary, but I'm Protestant, not Catholic. I'm not going to worship her if that's what they were doing. So I just stood there quietly, reverently, trying to remember that my love and loyalty belongs to God and God alone. Which makes the story of Jesus that much more remarkable. In the Gospel of Matthew, some wise men come from the east, from that part of the world where Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were asked to bow down to a 90-foot tall golden statue. But these men bowed down before a little boy in Bethlehem. They found him worthy of their worship. They gave him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. When that little boy grew up, he called some disciples to follow him. One day he asked them, "Who do you say that I am?" And Peter should have known better. He had heard the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He knew there was only one God, that he shouldn't give his love or loyalty to anyone else. And yet in that moment, he heard himself saying, "You, Jesus, are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." By following him closely, by listening to him preach and teach, by watching him help and heal, Peter had come to see that somehow, miraculously, Jesus and God were one and the same. He may have been the first, but in the centuries since, literally billions of people have come to see that Jesus is worthy of our worship. That's why we get excited about his coming. That's why we set aside an entire season to get ready. That's why on this first Sunday of Advent, I'm asking you to renew your commitment to worship God and God alone. I make this request in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, with deep appreciation for the example of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Amen.